If you are selling your art, whether part-time or full-time, you probably have a sales goal. Maybe it's how much you want to make at a show, in a month, or even a whole year. You might also have some goals for how you want your work schedule to look. But are your sales goals achievable in that time frame? Hi, I'm Stephanie. I work as a full-time ceramic artist, but I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm also a production potter. I have to work in bulk if I'm going to make this year's goal of $100,000 in sales. In this video, we'll walk through how I plan to make this goal possible, and I'll teach you how to check your own goals against your schedule to make sure they are realistic. Step 1. Create your timeline. When are you starting, and when do you need to be done? My goal is to make $100,000 this year, but I typically make at least half of my sales at the New York Renaissance Fair. So for this example, I am planning my calendar to end on opening day of the fair, August 17th, 2024. I started my planning in December, but I knew I wouldn't really start until January, so my start date is January 1st, 2024. There are 229 days between January 1st and August 17th this year. Next, you need to subtract the days that you won't be working. These may fall under a couple of categories. First, I'm going to subtract all the weekends between those two dates, which equals 66 days. I know I will end up working on some weekends, but I want to make my plan with the minimum number of working days so that I can make space for any unexpected disruptions. Now, if you're working a traditional part-time or full-time job, the weekends might be your art days. In that case, subtract your regular work days if you don't usually make art before or after work. I had 2 different part-time jobs before I went full-time with art. One was an 8-hour shift job, and I didn't like working in the studio on those days. But when I switched to working at a school library, I had 5-hour shifts that started around 12:30, 5 days a week. I always tried to be in the studio by 8 a.m. so that I could get 4 hours of studio work in before heading to my job. So even if my studio workday was only 4 hours long, that's what counted as a workday at that time. We'll break down our days into hours later. So for now, if you'll work on your art that day, keep it as a workday for your planning. You'll also want to subtract planned vacations and a few spare days for mental health or whatever may come up. I accounted for another 25 days between vacations and personal days. Again, it's better to overestimate your days off so that you can prove that your goals are possible in the minimum number of workdays. Step 2. Divide your workdays. When it comes to my pottery, I'm not throwing new pots every day. I work in cycles as I start, work on, and finish batches of pottery. I'm guessing that your art also has a process that might take a few days or even a few weeks to complete. If you're trying to estimate how many pieces you can make in a certain time period, you need to boil your working days down to the earliest step. In my case, the days that I am throwing. Since my calendar is leading up to the New York Renaissance Fair, I know that the week before is usually spent packing up in the studio and setting up at the fair. I don't touch any fresh clay that week, so I'm subtracting those 5 days from my work schedule. The final steps of my pottery include sanding the bottoms and measuring their capacity. I usually do this a kiln load at a time. I also usually glaze a kiln load at a time. I'm estimating an average of 3 kiln loads in a month for 8 months, so I'm subtracting 24 days each for both finishing and glazing. Finishing usually only takes a couple of hours, but I'm counting it as a full day because my online batches will also include photographing, editing, posting listings, and marketing them. So I've now subtracted down to 85 days that us potters usually call wet work days. These are the days before a piece goes into its first kiln firing. My typical process for a classic mug is throwing one day and then trimming and attaching a handle the next day. But for some of my more complex pieces, like my dragon mugs, they might have 2 or 3 additional days of adding detail after the throwing day. I'm averaging this process by allocating 2/3 of my wet work days to trimming, handling, sculpting, and carving, and 1/3 of the days to actually throwing. Likewise, try to average your art process so you can isolate the number of days that you are actually starting new work. I've broken my calendar down to 29 throwing days, meaning that between now and the Renaissance Fair, I am estimating that I will only have 29 days where I am starting new work. Will this be enough to produce the inventory needed for my sales goal? We're going to find that out in this next step. Step 3. Turn your days into dollars. My overall goal is to sell $100,000 worth of pottery and sculptures this year, but I'm looking for at least 50,000 of that to be made at the Renaissance Fair. Of course, I can't spend the next 8 months only making inventory for the fair. I need to make online sales to keep the income flowing between now and then. I actually set sliding goals of 50,000 to 80,000 for the Renaissance Fair and 20,000 to 40,000 for online sales when I did this for myself. But to keep things easy for this example, let's pull the 50,000 and the 20,000 goals together. This is the part where you're checking if your work schedule will make your sales goals possible. I'm looking at $70,000 worth of pottery being started in 29 days. When I divide 70,000 by 29, I get approximately $2,414, meaning that every day I am throwing on the wheel, I need to be starting about $2,400 worth of pottery. My classic mugs are currently $37 and my dragon mugs are $75. So I'm going to average and round down to $50 value per mug when I throw. When I divide 2,400 by 50, I get 48 mugs per throwing session, which is a reasonable amount for me. In fact, I can tell you how much time that will take. On a bad day, I throw at a rate of about 12 mugs per hour. And on a good day, I throw at a rate of 18 mugs per hour. That means I can take anywhere between 2.7 and 4 hours, or an average of 3 hours and 20 minutes to throw 48 mugs. Even though there are more work hours in a day than that, for the sake of my body, I try not to throw more than 4 hours a day anyways. But that means my throwing days also have room to complete other tasks before or after, which is great news for staying on top of my goals. Your workday for art might be only a couple of hours, or it might be a full 8 hours. Keep working your numbers until the daily hours make sense for you. To summarize this bit for your own goals, first, take your sales goal and divide it by the number of project starting days you calculated. That will give you a monetary value per start day. Then, pick one of your common products and its average price. Divide the daily monetary value by your item price to get the quantity of items you need to make. Does that number seem realistic to you? If not, you may need to either increase your number of work days, increase your individual prices, or decrease your final sales goal. Keep playing with those numbers until you get a daily start quantity that seems doable for you. Step 4. Keeping with it. I'm excited that my sales goals seem doable, but I also know that life can come with surprises and not every day is going to follow this mathematical average. I'll have to record, reflect, and recalculate as the months go on. Want to see if I make my goal? Hit subscribe so you can catch my monthly updates. I'll be taking you behind the scenes and showing you how I really spent my time in the studio. I've already been logging some hours for January, including the time spent writing this script. Need some help making your own plan? My Patreon members actually got a digital download of this worksheet with instructions back in November so they could start planning early. Join at the Fang Club tier or above and you'll get access to all of my past digital downloads, including this one. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up so that more small businesses and artists can find it as well. Let me know if you have any questions about this process and I'll include them in my January update video too. Thanks for watching and I hope you reach your sales goals this year.